Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. The news came out recently that showed that I think 215 or 216 dead bodies had been found buried at an old residential school site in Canada, in BC, and just outside of the city of Kamloops. What's terrifying about this story is that there were medical professionals at the time that this was happening who tried to ring alarm bells, but they were rebuffed and ignored. There's also this really disturbing runaway theory of, oh yeah, well they just ran away and perished probably somewhere out in the wilderness as they tried to go back home. Not only is that A, still really horrifying, but B, that also shows that people lied. And finally, this all just really brings home the fact that this is a genocide, that it was committed against Canada's indigenous population. And as I and others have covered in various videos before, that genocide continues to this day in the form of sterilizing women, stealing their babies away. The last residential school closed in 1996. This is not old history. As someone on Twitter pointed out, there are people who are still alive who played and play direct roles in this genocide who facilitated its hiding. People in power, in government, and in various other institutions, be they public or private or even in the church, they are complicit in trying to hide the genocide of our indigenous people. And they're still out there in our communities, serving as our friends, neighbors, and family members. This is just in one residential school. And some of these bones that they have found of these 215 children, some are from children as young as 3. And quite frankly, when you hear natives talk about their experiences in residential schools, it shouldn't surprise us that children were dying in such a system. This system was beyond brutal. It was outright evil. And it didn't end until the mid-90s. There was the 60s scoop where they stole even more kids away. The controversial birth alert system continues to this day. There was that news recently that I and others covered about how girls, indigenous girls, as young as 10, were forcibly given IUDs. Indigenous women being told that their babies are being seized from them in the hospital right after giving birth. Or worse still, being told that they can't see their baby unless they sign a release form stating that they will, willingly get sterilized. This is a horror from the past that came to the present, but the present is no less horrifying for the indigenous community in Canada. So this notion that we have in Canada of, well, if we did commit genocide, it was in the past, and was it really a genocide? Enough. This absolutely was a genocide. This is just a sign of a mass burial at one residential school in an unmarked grave. Imagine how many more across this vast country. How many more died in the foster care system? How many more continue to die on the streets of our cities and in smaller communities? How many more innocent natives need to die for us to recognize that we are the villain in this story? And that, I think, is the crux of all this for me. Canada is not the good guy in this story. And we say, oh yes, we're apologizing for all these actions of the past, but our terrible actions continue to this day. The genocide of the First Nations continues in a myriad of different ways today. And the fact that so many of my fellow Canadians don't recognize this and can't even recognize a genocide when they see one and recognize that we are the villains here is definitely what's bothering me today.